Welcome back to CARAHCAST, the podcast from Carasoft, the trusted government IT solutions provider. Subscribe to get the latest technology updates in the public sector. I'm Corey Baumgartner, your host from the Carasoft production team. On behalf of HackerOne, we would like to welcome you to today's podcast, focused around the differences between a vulnerability disclosure policy and a bug bounty program. Alex Rice, Chief Technology Officer at HackerOne, and Corben Leo, an ethical hacker from the Hack U.S. program, will discuss how HackerOne's Hack U.S. program is performed to better understand which bug bounty or VDP program is best fit for your agency.
Corben, how'd you get started? What motivated you to start hacking? What walk us back to kind of the origin of how you went down this path?
Yeah, so I didn't even know what hacking was. So it started when I was a freshman in high school. So I went to a private school and we were given laptops to do schoolwork on. And so there's a student account and then there's the admin account. We couldn't go on the admin account, obviously, but there are these applications installed on these laptops that wouldn't let you go on YouTube or Twitch or all these flash game websites. So we couldn't play video games during school. And obviously, as a freshman in school who doesn't really enjoy learning about math and stuff, I obviously want to go on all these sites. So I figured out after a bit of Googling that you could just restart the computer. And when you'd reboot it, you could just hold two keys down and it would boot you into what was called single user mode. So basically it would boot into a terminal with root privileges. And obviously I didn't even know what I was looking at, but I just followed these steps online. And so you could delete a file, restart the computer. The computer would think it was a brand new computer. And then you could just type in the username and password for a new account. And so I did it to all of my friends' computers. We were living the life for a good day, just playing video games and whatnot. And little did I know that the school IT guy could see every single person's screen. So he's sitting in his office, looking at all these screens, and all of a sudden he sees 5 kids just playing video games in class. So I didn't really play video games that much, but all my friends were doing it. So they got pulled in his office and then into the principal's office. And I was they held up for a little bit and eventually got snitched on. And I got in trouble for hacking. And I'm I don't even know what hacking is. I just wanted to play video games or just really I just wanted to watch YouTube videos and just kind of do whatever I wanted. So yeah, I got in trouble. I got a couple of detentions for hacking. And it kind of just put me down this rabbit hole of, what's hacking? I had a ton of fun doing that, even though I got in trouble. And it was just this curiosity that really, inspired me and motivated me to learn more about it. And I didn't even know that it was a career field. I was just learning what hacking was, doing it to random websites. And then I stumbled across HackerOne. I'm wait, what? People get paid to do this legally? This is a whole career field. So yeah, the rest is history.
That's awesome, and I'm glad it was a local detention only. Corben, you touched on this a little bit at the beginning, but I think it might be good to get a little bit more into some of the broader misconceptions that people have about that, because you've kind of touched on their intent and their ethics, where they get started. But what are some of the other misconceptions people might have about what goes into ethical hacking?
There's a lot of different misconceptions. I think that what's been portrayed too is they're these just nerdy guys, but there's a lot of just really great women security researchers too that are actively doing bug bounties. So there's misconceptions about sex of people that do them. Yeah, like I said, with just the very stereotypical motivations as well. So people think that people just hack because of monetary rewards. Also, I think that a lot of people actually do hacking because it's just a challenge and it's fun to them. It's just a big puzzle and people really enjoy the curiosity and the whole process of creatively overcoming certain obstacles.
What type of tools do you use to assist you in the process?
I think this is pretty standard for everyone, but I mostly just use Burp Suite. So that's just an HTTP proxy. So you can see all of your basically network traffic that your browser is generating when you're visiting websites. Use tools I don't know, how do you pronounce it? FF. So basically you can do directory brute forcing and guess files. I use my tool that I wrote called GAU, or Get All URLs, to see what's on a website. I think those are basically the only 3 tools I really use.
Leaning on your creativity there.
Yes, my creativity. Yes.
Cool. Want to give us one more example of a interesting or impactful bug you found? It might be hard to top hacking a
Yeah.
transatlantic
Okay.
cable.
There's two I can think of in particular that was submitted to the same company, and it was before and after actually HackerOne event in Las Vegas. I think it was in 2019. So one of them was, it was a really big company. We found this application that was online that shouldn't have been online. If you entered the person's email, you could look at like exactly where they were when they were using the application. You could get all of their like authorization tokens. It was like the God mode of like I don't know, it was some sort of internal application that they used to look at all their customer stuff. And it was like, I could just do anything I wanted to anyone and like just see exactly where they were logged in. I could like basically use that to get access to their email inboxes. I can't talk too much about that. And then the one was, I was looking at something the night of that event. The event ended, and the next day I was in the airport waiting to fly back home. And I found another vulnerability that let me change news headlines. Basically, I could publish anything to this news website and modify any news article that this news site had ever published. So that was also very, very impactful and interesting vulnerability.
I'd love to hear a little bit about, you kind of told us later you worked on a few DoD programs. Can you tell us a little more about that? Like, how did you get started? Walk us through your relationship with the DoD programs.
One of the first programs that I learned to actually hack on was the Department of Defense's vulnerability disclosure program. Basically, if you found a vulnerability or if you found or do find any vulnerability in any military website, you can report it to this program and it will get fixed eventually. So I started learning to hack by hacking the military, basically. That was very like instrumental in me becoming like the hacker I am today. And eventually that turned into the Hack U.S. programs. So these are just programs that they ran for whether it be months or weeks, but basically the Department of Defense partnered with HackerOne to run all sorts of programs, whether it was like Hack the Air Force, Hack the Army, like 2.0, 3.0. They have like Hack the Pentagons, and Hack the Proxy Challenge. So I won Hack the Army 2.0, I won Hack the Army 3.0, and I won the Hack the Proxy Challenge. Oh, and those ones were like bug bounty programs, so they did pay you for vulnerabilities you find. So that's different than the traditional just vulnerability disclosure program where you see something, you say something. Basically, it's just a way for you to submit a vulnerability, help them fix it. Whereas the bug bounty programs are inviting a select amount of researchers to find vulnerabilities and get paid for them on sometimes a smaller scope.
Yeah, I thought I'd share a few quick stats on the DoD vulnerability disclosure program because it's hard to appreciate the scale of that program's operating at until you really get into it. And Corben said a minute ago, like it really is any site owned by.
It's a huge scope.
Any IP address in the DoD's IP ranges, any .mil, any of their military.gov sites on the civilian side, a huge scope out there. They've been running this program without any type of economic rewards for, I think, coming up on 8 years now. It'll be their I might be off. I might be incrementing a few there. A classic off by 1 or 2 error on that. But it's had incredible impact on DoD since then. There's been over 40,000 vulnerabilities in that period of time identified by independent third parties like Corben. A little over 3,000 independent researchers have participated in that process from all over the world for a ton of different reasons. And the program's expanding quite a bit. Last summer, they kicked off a pilot on expanding scope to the Defense Industrial Base, which is effectively all of the DoD's IT supply chain, which had similar results across a much wider scope of companies that support it. And so it just really goes to show you that without any type of monetary incentive, just by offering a submission process and most critically, a safe harbor statement, which gives folks like Corben confidence that they're not going to end up on the receiving end of any type of law enforcement action, you can get some incredible results. And then we can talk a little bit about it differently, but there's these parallel programs that the DoD runs that are all bounty programs where Corben is actually getting paid. And those are like really focused towards specific objectives. Corben, I was hoping, rather than talking about just the differences between VDPs and bug bounty programs, I was hoping you could talk a little bit about the way you interact with those programs. Like, what do you look for in a VDP? What do you look for in a bounty program? Why do you decide to participate in one program versus another? Can you talk a little bit about the distinct motivations you have between those two types of programs?
Yeah, for sure. So the motivations obviously differ a bit. So I think that the larger Department of Defense vulnerability disclosure program is really good to own in on your skills and try new things. So because the scope is so big, there's so many different technologies running on all of their different websites. So it's a really good place to learn and just work on your methodology. At the same time, obviously, you're helping the Department of Defense become more secure, which is great. It's also really good for working on any tooling or automation. So I have lots of friends that also do bug bounties, and lots of them have some tooling or automation they use, and they like that program to test their automation to see how well it works and like how effective it is at finding vulnerabilities. And so it gives them the opportunity to build tools to help them hack and become more effective while at the same time, like protecting the Department of Defense. So the vulnerability disclosure program is really good for learning, trying new things, and like working on like tooling. And then these focused bug bounty challenges are very fun because you can do similar things and really actually test your skills and see how well you can perform in them on a more structured scope. It's more of a competition than the vulnerability disclosure ones because you submit a vulnerability to a vulnerability disclosure program, you're not going to get rewarded. So if you submit a vulnerability that someone has already submitted, you get a duplicate. It's not really a big deal because you weren't going to get paid anyways. Whereas in a bug bounty program, if you submit a vulnerability and someone else had already submitted it, you don't get rewarded for it. So it adds more of a competition aspect because like you want to be the first to find this vulnerability and the first to report it. So it's really fun and a lot more challenging. It makes you work a lot harder on the program. So I'm far more incentivized to spend my time doing a bug bounty program because there's a reward for me there. So these programs are a lot more effective than vulnerability disclosure programs on getting attention towards like specific assets or whatever they have in scope and like whatever's a priority to them.
I'd love your opinion on how experienced you need to be before starting to think about bounty programs.
That's a great question. I think that you need some experience in just understanding kind of how like websites work or just how the web works. So like there's Hacker 101 course, there's the Portswigger Web Academy. As long as you can go through those, I think you're good to go. I think that learning by doing is one of the best ways to learn because as you're going through and like trying to do a bounty, you'll understand where the holes are in your knowledge and you'll be like, okay, I'm really confused right now. I need to go back and learn this thing and I need to review this. So I would say you don't need a ton of experience, but you just need some basic fundamentals like the building blocks that are necessary in order to do them. But I think that you need to try before you think you're ready to try because you'll learn far more than you would have just by going through a little roadmap or taking a ton of courses.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the plug there. There's a free tool, hacker101.com, that we put out for not just bug bounty programs, but any type of offensive security research that if you're interested, I think that's a great place to start. If you fare well through the Hacker 101 courses, you'll probably be well set up for finding things in bounty programs also. One other tip that I would add on there for folks getting started there, other than just experience and skill set, for your first bounty programs that you're getting started, there's so many of them out there. Mm-hmm. Pick a target that you're interested in, like either a company that you care about or a tech stack that you're interested in or a branch of the armed services that you resonate with. Try to find the ones that have a little bit more motivation for it because it really, Corben touched on it earlier, if you have some inherent curiosity about the thing you're trying to hack, you'll be a lot more effective than just experience and skill set. So I would try to mix the two together. Start from kind of the baseline experience, but then really ask yourself, is there anything out there that you're kind of curious about how it works, or want to learn more about it, you want to partner a little bit more with the organization on? I think you'll have a much better time getting into your first bounty program. Yeah,
that's a really great thing to add too, because it can be pretty discouraging. I think like it took me 10 months to get my first bounty, which is like normally long compared to like what some of the other hackers were, but it just kind of showed like I wasn't extremely experienced going into it, but just having the motivation and the curiosity just like, okay, well, how does this work? And like, how could I break this specific thing? It just takes a lot of time just going through things and wanting to do bounties for the sake of doing bounties rather than like whatever financial reward might be at the end of the tunnel. So I think that's also a very important aspect to it is, I guess, why are you wanting to do it? And then just, just enjoy the process of learning rather than what might happen from, like getting rewards and whatnot. So I think that's, really, really important.
Cool. Let's talk a little bit about the civilian branches of the government. The DoD kind of stands alone in the maturity of their relationships with security researchers. They've got a pretty advanced VDP there. There's a few others that are leading the way there, like GSA's programs are pretty advanced. CISA has a pretty mature program. You're seeing more and more government agencies start to set these programs up, especially as some regulations start to require it. I'd love to hear any advice you have for folks that might be at one of those agencies. What would you encourage them to keep in mind? What's important for them to be thinking about if they're going to be setting these type of programs outside of the DoD, the civilian branches of the government?
I think it's good to kind of start small and test how things will go, because I think it can be dangerous to go all in if it's your very, very first experience doing like a bug bounty program. So I think that, for instance, like HackerOne has a lot of private programs that are running. There's been a lot of cities and other branches of the government that have started out with private bug bounty so they can invite high quality researchers to find vulnerabilities in their applications. And I think it's also very important to determine which applications you want to start within scope and phase things in, figure out like what has the biggest business risk. Like your marketing websites probably aren't as important as like maybe a payroll application that has social security numbers in it. So you have to figure out like what's really important to your organization, what is the worst case scenario, like what data would be the worst case to be leaked, and then like where does it live, and kind of trace that back to your attack surface and say, okay, we want this application A, application B, application C to start out with, and we're going to invite like maybe 20 to 60 researchers to come try to find vulnerabilities in this. It doesn't even need to be, that doesn't really matter, but running just like a smaller bug bounty program and kind of refining and getting used to the process, and then iteratively launch towards something bigger where you can have more stuff in scope. But at the same time, I think it's very important to have some sort of channel to submit vulnerabilities through, because there's a lot of other people who aren't bug bounty hunters that might stumble across vulnerabilities and they need a place to report them still. Because if they don't have that safe harbor, they're going to be worried about like, okay, well, is it even legal that I might have like accidentally stumbled across this vulnerability, but I still need a channel to report it. And they're worried about like legal repercussions of that. So I think that's also very important. Like it is important to have a VDP, but for more so the bug bounty side is like maybe start small, but you also need to have a channel to report vulnerabilities. So it's like kind of two sides of the spectrum. Yeah, I'm sure, Alex, you can add more to that.
It's wonderful. I think I'll mention a resource there because one of the things the government does really well compared to private companies is the amount of transparency that they have through these programs and reporting. In particular, if you're thinking about setting up one of these disclosure programs or having a formal process to receive reports from folks like Corben, I'd really check out all of the data and the annual reports that the DoD has published on their programs. You search for the DoD VDP program. They do both an annual report, which goes into a ton of detail on how the programs work for them and lessons learned. They also do monthly bug bites, which are a bit more kind of a heartbeat on what they're seeing month over month. And it's a level of transparency you won't find in other areas, and can really give you a sense of how the programs are working or what type of activity you might expect in a program like that. So I think I'd plug that resource if you're thinking about it. We were talking about Hacker 101 earlier. Are there any other specific courses that helped you build your foundation? Anything else you'd recommend?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that when I was starting out, there still wasn't a lot of courses like there are today. I watched a lot of YouTube videos with like weird electronic music, just figuring things out. But now there's tons of courses nowadays, something that I guess would have been nice to have years ago. But I think, yeah, like I said, Portsmouth Web Academy is free, open source, and that's really, really good to get hands-on experience. And they're just like really good labs, material to go through. I think there's like pen tester lab. There's all sorts of courses that are out there nowadays. I think Web Security One by Portswigger and Pen Tester Lab are two really, really solid courses.
I think one of the great things about getting into this in 2023 is the diversity of different types and formats that you have out here
Mhm.
that really fit everyone's learning materials. I'd also plus one the ones that Corben just mentioned for folks who are a little bit more personable and storytelling. I'd follow a bunch of researchers on their various social networks. I'd
Mhm.
also, if it's your type of format, there's quite a few researchers that do Twitch live streams of their actual
Mhm.
hacking. I've heard quite a few people find as more representative of what they really go through because they're kind of talking out loud and walking you through the mentality, not just showing you the tools, which can be a little bit
Yeah.
descriptive on it. So I plug those like Nahamsek and Zion
Yeah.
have some important security oriented Twitch streams. And then the other last note I'd make on this is really respect the foundational stuff here. Like
Mhm.
some of the best knowledge you can gain has nothing to do with security at all.
Oh,
Any
absolutely.
development, scripting, getting to know frameworks, understanding open source, like the things you learn in how to build software and how software is built is often just as important, if not more important, than the knowledge on how to break software.
I think maybe one misconception as well is obviously you don't need to have technical know-how to like find vulnerabilities, but I really agree with you there that you really do want to have a really strong base layer of knowledge, right? In order to like break something, you first need to understand how it works, and you'll do that. You can understand or gain that understanding by doing development. That's one thing that really helped me become a better hacker than I was learning how web applications work, how all these like little pieces work together, how applications are deployed with different microservices. So I think it's really important. It might be dry at first, but it's really about just like loving the process and just having curiosity. We keep going back to is just understand how things are made. And once you understand that, you can be like, oh, well, that is made like this, but like you can circumvent that, and or there's something wrong with that. And I guess that's really what hacking is just seeing how things work and then finding ways to go around it. You can break those things. So yeah, I think that's a very, very important piece.
Thanks for listening, and thank you to our guests, Alex Rice and Corben Leo. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to CARAHCAST, and be sure to listen to our other discussions. If you'd like more information on how HackerOne can assist your organization, please visit www.carasoft.com/HackerOne or email us at hackerone@carasoft.com. Thanks again for listening, and have a great day.